Welcome everyone who's joining us online. And I'm going to be sort of looking over my shoulder here at a computer where I'm monitoring that set of circumstances. So this is part of our Conversations on AI symposium that we have been running this year during the summer, and we ran it last year as well. And it ran with some success, I think, because lots of people in education, K-12 and higher ed, are, needless to say, either interested in AI or they, to paraphrase, I think it's Leon Trotsky, they know that if they're not interested in AI, it's interested in them. So that's where we are at present. And in fact, I suppose we'll bring up ChatGPT in case it is material for the evening's events. And you can see my own ChatGPT searches as a historian are manifest on the side there. Although the dog study request was from our previous July 23rd event, the recording of which will appear next week. So I'm going to start by having our panel introduce themselves. And I think the crux of the conversation tonight is, where are we in September of 2024, looking at an upcoming semester and having 1 year's experience, maybe a little more than that, teaching in the presence of large language model chatbot AIs. Robin, I think we'll start down on your end.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Sullivan, and I'm an instructional designer, and I work in the University at Buffalo Libraries. I'm with the new Linked Center. It is a center where faculty and students can come and get help using any type of emerging technologies for teaching, learning, and research. I have another hat, and I am the director of the SUNY Exploring Emerging Technologies for Lifelong Learning and Success initiative. It is an online course and a database of freely available emerging technology tools, and artificial intelligence is just one category within that larger project. So that's who I am.
I'm Jonathan Lawrence. I'm kind of scared to realize this is my 20th year here at Canisius. I teach in the Religious Studies department and am not necessarily the first one to ever adopt various tools, but I like playing around with different things and sometimes breaking the tools in the process, and then having to notify Mark that something's not working. But over the years, I've tried various things in terms of digital humanities, and so have done projects with oral histories, with mapping. I'm currently trying to wrap up a 3D representation of the campus chapel with ways to be able to point at the windows and get a pop-up window that explains what's in the pictures. And so after seeing demonstrations of some of the things AI was doing, I've been trying to incorporate the sort of critical reflection about the tools into my classes, because the classes I teach usually have a information literacy component, and so this plays right into that.
And I'm Dave Rogalski. I'm a technology integrator at a K-12 school district, Kenton. I've been a technology integrator for about the past 5 years, and it's really my role in the district to encourage teachers to embrace and use new technology with students. And of course, AI is becoming on the forefront of that. So 2 years ago, when I first heard of AI, it wasn't really well known in the district. And it very quickly, as people began to learn about it, there was grave concern, particularly among humanities teachers, English teachers, social studies teachers were panicked about how students would use this tool to cheat. Of course, the other side of that is that it's here and it's not going away, and it's going to revolutionize large portions of what we do. So finding that balance is a big part of how I approach AI, finding that middle road so that we're certainly providing remedies for how it might be misused, but also recognizing that we do have to prepare our students to use it, because the students that we have now at K-12 will graduate in a world that is vastly different than the one that all of us graduated in.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a common thread here. Specifically, all three of you were at Canisius University in last year's various panel events, and I think you were on different panels, or you were a participant, an active participant as an attendee. And I think I even said at one of those events something effective. We're going to do this again next year, and we're going to revisit. So where are we now? You know, provided we're still employed and so on and so forth. AI hasn't replaced us that quickly. So what do you think over the past year? What, say, one or two or three developments have you witnessed that you can sort of pick out and say, yeah, this is something that's been my generalizations in conversations about AI in the last month or something to that effect? Robin?
So I do believe that we've come a long way in that year. And last year when we were talking about AI, I was very new to the idea myself. And it's my role to try to find and learn about the latest innovations and technologies and help students and faculty understand how to use them the best way possible. And at the very beginning, everybody that I spoke with, faculty type, would be very, very concerned about the academic cheating. And there was very little integration of AI in really meaningful ways. They were very much on the idea that, you know, we have to stop this, we have to disallow it, ban it from the district or the school or the department. And I think after that initial wave, there's still many concerns about cheating and academic dishonesty. But now I think that that portion of the evolution of artificial intelligence has passed. And now we're looking at it much more critically and thinking, how can we must help our learners understand how to use AI the most effective way possible, because they will be using it in their future. And so it's, I think people are much more accepting of the idea. But I still run into faculty that are dealing with, you know, many instances of, you know, this student or these many students have, you know, seem to have plagiarized and I need to now go forward. I've also spoken to some of the students who've, you know, one of them was, you know, just dead set. If AI is going to be any part of this project, I am not going to be part of the project. She did not want, and this was maybe, I don't know, halfway through the year, but I think we do see it. They're very frightened. You know, if there's any part of AI in my existence, I might be targeted as, you know, academic dishonesty. So I think that's the biggest shift that I've seen, is that, you know, there's still both sides happening, but we're now able to look at it a little deeper and think a little bit more critically and be a little bit more knowledgeable about what we're going forward with.
Certainly my experience at Canisius has been similar in terms of some of the same conversations. And I know that initially there was quite a push to get it into the academic integrity policy. And certainly professors are allowed to make the statement in their syllabus, you know, AI tools may not be used. Myself, I'm a little bit uncertain how much you can prove it and how reliably you can prove it. Although just as with plagiarism in general, sometimes it's so blatant. I had a student write, the thing I love about the scriptures is that its pages are wet with the tears of humanity, which kind of flagged for me that this was probably not a college student's own words. But this was 20 years ago. And so I was able to use other tools and find the source and verify that they had indeed plagiarized. But in most cases, it's been more a process of saying, when it was back to just plagiarism, to say the balance between trying to check and verify, but also trying to make sure that assignments were specific enough and focused enough to not allow the narrow, as an English major in college, most of my assignments, the instructions were one sentence long. Write a 5-page paper about this source. And we did it. But that leaves a lot of room, particularly with websites and other things available right now, for a student to find or even hire someone to write the paper for them. And some of the plagiarism tools wouldn't catch that. I see that as very similar to what we're dealing with AI, that some of it can be addressed by assignment design, some of it by through some of the resources that the school provided in these conversations, to start saying, okay, let's look at what the AI tools are doing. And the fact that a year ago, and I haven't tested all the parameters, but a year ago, we were getting a lot of really weird hallucinations. Sometimes it still may be showing up, but some of the things that I've tested and showed in class, it's adequate. I just today in class, I was showing, we were talking about how you define religion. So I showed some things, and actually this was from January, so it might be updated, or it might be even different, but could show that it was a decent definition. It wasn't great. It wasn't genius level, but it at least gave a start for the conversation. And like you were saying, I certainly can see the concern on a student's level of trying to protect themselves, that there would never be any accusation. But the other side is to say, okay, if these tools are there, just this weekend I saw an ad for Grammarly that was going way beyond just, we'll help you correct your grammar and your spelling, so we'll even help you get started. And that's different from someone going specifically to an AI tool and saying, help me write this paper. This is going to a resource that many of us are already saying you can use. And so are the students even going to be aware, oh, I was using Grammarly. I was already told I can use Grammarly, and this is what happened. So did I really even use AI? And so how do you even frame the declaration that students have to make? If you ask them to say, I used AI and what ways I did it, are they even fully cognizant that they're using AI?
And I think we certainly have seen that AI has become mainstream. I mean, you mentioned a TV commercial for an AI application. I'm not going to say universal, but you find it on almost every social media platform has an AI component to it now. And of course, the changes that it's going to have and is having within employment is dramatic as well. So we're living in this age where things are changing rapidly. And I think if anything that has really changed over the past year, it's that teachers, and I'm really coming at this from the perspective of teachers, are recognizing that we're not living in the same age anymore, that things are shifting. And I think what's really important is that we recognize we can't continue to teach the same way we did in the previous age in this new age. We're going to have to adapt our pedagogy. And I think there are many facets to that. But in my district, I see some movement on that front. I would say it's evolutionary movement. It's not moving as quickly as it needs to, but I'm hoping that it's going to accelerate. If we are... And again, I'm thinking of this from the K-12 perspective. If we are sending our students home to do the most challenging work, while we've spent the entire class period lecturing to them in a whole class format, then we shouldn't be surprised that they are going to use a tool like AI to help them be successful. We also need to recognize that, cheating has been around. It's the second oldest profession in the world, right? Students are going to cheat. They always have, they always will. AI is certainly going to aid them in that process unless we change our pedagogy and we shift our techniques and our approaches. So that, there are a lot of reasons that students cheat. They cheat because they don't understand the content. They cheat because they want their grade to be higher. They cheat because they're overextended. They cheat because they might be lazy. And addressing those in our instructional design is going to be a critical component of addressing AI, in my opinion.
So to your, all three, you sort of were touching on this. The Android has an app that's specifically for Google search, and it riffs off of the other apps like Google Chrome and things like that. And they had, at least the other day, and they might still, an option in it that said scan and solve homework. This is Google. This isn't, some company on the internet whom you've never heard of that's appealing to students and, banner ads and sketchy sketch. This is Google. And so a lot of these even big tech firms are becoming quite candid about the potential for these tools to be used by students, and are, at least in part, unafraid to suggest that these tools may be used by students. They don't feel that there's a lot of public opprobrium that they're helping students cheat or something to that effect. I'd sort of in a way segue and say, how do you feel your concerns may have changed from what you were looking at in September 2023 to what you're looking at now? Like, what were you worried about back then? If you even remember, like, compared to like, how has that evolved over the last year?
I have a few analogies that I look at, when we first introduced calculators into the classroom. That's kind of the very similar. If I asked you to multiply a 3-digit number by another 3-digit number, you might have to pull out a calculator or something to get the right answer. And that's totally acceptable now, but back when we were first using calculators, it was not. Spell check. Same thing, and grammar check. We're talking about Grammarly. So it's not expected that a student would turn in a paper that did not have any, if they were not in there checking their grammar and checking their spelling and, doing many other things to make sure that it's the most correct grammar to submit. And so I also want to bring up, Google searching. So you would have to know different ways on how to structure your Google search to get the most accurate results. Well, that's become, and if you even bring that to library searching, you'd have to be even more specific in how you would find the results that you were aiming for. With the evolution of AI, there's much more conversation like happening. And you can now go into your Chrome browser, and I'm sure any one of them will, allow you to do conversations to find searching, and it's just going to be another part of everyday life that we have to use effectively and ethically, I think.
Well, in certainly thinking in terms of the ways that it has snuck in, and the things that maybe using these powers for good. I've noticed recently that, if you're searching on Amazon, and instead of having to read through hundreds of reviews, Amazon will give you the AI generated summary. Now, if we're allowed to name, certain corporations here, part of me does want to be suspicious. Well, is this accurately reflecting the negative reviews, or is this sort of shifted to try to make you want to buy the product? But of course, ultimately, if people were to get the idea that somebody was shifting things in that way, that would backfire on them. So I'd like to think that corporations are doing that. But, the analogy that I thought of was back when the robot assembly lines were coming in and, this is going to destroy certain industries. And yes, it certainly changed them, but we still have an automotive industry, despite having the robots and some of the tools that are there. We've had to shift. There are certain tasks that I am perfectly glad to hand over to AI tools, at least if there's ways to verify. But I also think, in terms of careers that our students are looking at, there are certain companies that have, sort of hired and switched over to, oh, well, we can cut our workforce because we can use AI, and they may eventually realize that that didn't fully work. But again, where we maybe can be teaching our students to do the critical thinking about what AI is generating so that there still is a human component needed, because AI is not going to be able to do all of these things. But it can easily collate lots and lots of information. And so our job now becomes how to assess that and analyze it, not just the collecting of the information, not testing whether they remember the things. And frankly, speaking for myself, I like the fact that the spell check and grammar check tools are available, because that levels the playing field so that I can be grading the students' ideas and not have them losing points or being looked down upon because they're not using the words right. Or, a friend from college who just because of maybe, some learning disabilities or something, just could not spell correctly, and many times felt people, that this was somehow a moral failing of them not being able to spell. If we can help students at least level it, or people learning a new language be able to express what they're saying without having to worry that someone's going to look at them and say, oh, you don't speak English good, to try to be a little bit funny. That's a really good thing. But then it's the question still of how we use it and what habits we ourselves are setting. And one of the things maybe we can talk about later is the ways that we ourselves are using it, if we want to actually say that publicly.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that, because in my district, I teach some staff development courses on AI. And I think most of the teachers are taking the course because I promised them ways that they can mitigate the fears they have of cheating. But we don't talk about that until the end of the second day. And in the first day of this course, I spent all my time showing them how productive it can make them, and how it can take the mundane tasks that they hate doing, that are really a waste of their time, and it can allow them to breeze through it. And once we've done that, I approach them with the idea, you see how beneficial this is. Why are we not going to let students use this? And our challenge is, how do we get students to use it so they're still mastering the content, but they're also learning the skills that are going to allow them to be successful in the future? And there's a lot of challenges there. And the truth is, none of us have answers on this. None of us have experts on this. We're going to have to kind of muddle our way through it. But there are approaches that we can take, and hiding from the AI is not part of it. I love the idea of just, bringing all these different tools in, the homework cheating app with Grammarly and all these other tools, and having students compare the outputs of those programs to see just exactly how they, what kind of content they're giving, how they benefit, how they might be a drag on their abilities.
Well, and for that matter, I remember when I was taking calculus, there were some people that claimed that they had found the teacher's copy that had all the answers in the back. Now, the answers still aren't going to help you if you can't recreate it and show the process of getting to that answer. And I know that in some cases, even if you have the correct answer, but you don't show your work, you're not getting full credit. But, opportunities to cheat and ways to cheat, or the files of past exams that were shared by certain groups on campus, those have existed for a long time. So it's not that the idea of cheating is somehow new. It's the tools. But I think there's, as I think several of us have said, there's also the idea of, how is this going to change how we teach? And whether it's saying go to Khan Academy for the extra clues about how to solve quadratic equations, so that if one student is struggling with it, you're not taking up the time for the whole class, or a tool that you can scan it and it'll solve it for you. Well, maybe that means we'll change how we do this, or we'll spend more time focusing on what does this principle or this equation mean? How did we get to it? And not just, can you plug in the numbers and do it?
I've been for my career as a technology integrator, I have been focusing on getting teachers to use new and innovative pedagogy. And when AI came around, I was like, the stuff that I've been pushing is really the answer for the problems. The idea of flipping your classroom, we're lecturing to students in whole groups, and the top half of that group is bored and the bottom half of the group is confused, and we're only talking to the middle. Whole group instruction is not an effective approach.
We're talking to the 1 or 2 students that are the younger versions of us.
So those kids who are confused and don't understand the lecture, they're going to go home and they're going to use AI to cheat. And the kids who don't really find value in the lecture because they already know it are going to use AI to cheat. So I think there's a lot of approaches that we need to shift in our pedagogy, and whole group instruction is one of them. But there are many more. The essay. And I don't know if there are any English teachers in the crowd, but the essay, I'm not saying that it's not important, but maybe we need to not only do essays, but look at other forms of assessment as well. Because if we're sending kids home to write essays, they're going to write a prompt for that essay.
I've been a longtime supporter of lifelong learning, and that's the theme of the SUNY Exploring Emerging Technologies course. Is the very first part of that course is teaching people how to become a lifelong learner. And if you don't know something, I'm not good at math. That's not the way to think about it. It's the growth mindset is I'm not good at math yet until I figure out how to practice and learn and become better in math. And so I think that is one of the skills that we need to teach our students, how to be a lifelong learner. And we need to think, what can a human do much more effectively than the AI? And what are these traits that we need to develop? Being creative, being a critical thinker, analyzing. And those are some of the things that we need to focus on. I also want to comment back. A lot of people are very concerned. AI is going to, get rid of all the, lower level jobs. Good. Very, very good. In my opinion, that if we can take things and change the way that they are accomplished, we'll have a lot more time for many more meaningful things. Maybe we'll have a lot more time to solve, how do we cure cancer? Maybe we'll have a lot more time to have a happy and productive family life. Mm-hmm. So I am, very much looking forward to some of the jobs being removed through AI. But I feel that is going to be beneficial and give us more time for things that are more meaningful. And I think those skills that we learn, lifelong learning, will help us along the way.
Just like robots can take some of the most dangerous jobs. We don't have to send as many people into nuclear reactors because we can send the robots to do some of those kinds of things. And yes, job-wise, that I'm sure some people lost their jobs, but that's a job that I think is ultimately good goes away.
So along the lines of, there's a couple of things I'm probably going to experiment with in the coming year. And for example, I'm interested in the relationship between AI and lateral reading. So I'm trying to move on in information literacy, which everybody agrees. We're literally in a classroom that's built for information literacy currently in the library. There's posters all around. And lateral reading is kind of being touted as a sort of replacement for evolution of the crap test, which was sort of so 20 teens. And so the other day I asked ChatGPT to tell me about a bad book, a book I know that is notorious for sort of pushing a conspiracy theory, but it has all the marks of scholarship. And it actually did a very good job of outlining the problems and the fact that it was not considered to be an interpretation grounded in evidence and consensus amongst. So it did a perfect job at lateral reading. in 2024, what's your 2025? What's your hopes for experimenting with AI and pedagogy? What's your sort of thought about where you'd like to experiment? Robin?
One thing that I would like to experiment with and have faculty experiment with and students is how can we show the thought process behind whatever project that we are working on, whether it's a 5-paragraph essay. Where did the idea come from? Sure, if you use AI to help you develop ideas, great. And then, what parts of that are your work and what parts are AI? And I would like to see us come up with different methods to help show that work. And, some of the tools that we have now, Google Docs or Track Changes, they're very good at that, but I think it's still a little cumbersome for a student to put together a package that says, this was the part that is me, and this is the part that I received help with. And so I'd like to see how that is done. I know that in that realm of at UB, we do not have a across the board policy that says, all students should or should not. It's per faculty come up with the policy, and per assignment, they can come up with the policy. And there's rubrics that will now help the learner to say, this is the level of my involvement with AI in this project. I'd like to see that process a little bit more fleshed out.
Well, I hadn't thought about it until just now, but to a certain extent, that's the way I know that in some of our classes, it's not just the final product that's graded on, but that it's sort of the portfolio. So, for the people teaching first year writing classes, yes, the ultimate goal may be to have a polished product as the more traditional essay at the very end, but the students are also submitting the different stages. And so to be able to have them collect and show, okay, I used the AI tools at these various steps along the way, and to be able to show this is the value added, for lack of a better way to put it, of what I put in there. And of course that's part of where it comes back to the content and what the students are learning. Also recognizing that I teach mostly introductory courses, so I even at the end of the semester, I can't necessarily expect them to be that broadly knowledgeable or nuanced on a lot of things, certainly not graduate student level or senior major level, but I can still have them, be able to show, okay, I've become more sophisticated in my thought about this. And the challenge is that in trying to evaluate whether ChatGPT has given you a good answer, is you do actually need a certain amount of content knowledge or contextual knowledge to be able to fact check it. So in some ways, I think one of the things, and I tried this once and I'm going to keep trying it, is more a matter of trying to say, okay, here's ChatGPT, here's a couple of other sources, compare how they're working. So I teach the religious studies introductory class. One of the goals that's defined by the core curriculum and therefore is part of our class is information literacy. And I've had components of that in the class, but never as clear as I wanted it in the final assignments. And so this year, what I did was teaching religious literacy. A lot of people have probably seen those memes that go around every Easter. Is Easter a pagan holiday? Or rather just claiming Easter is a pagan holiday based on Ishtar, Eostra, or whatever. And because, of course, we all know that rabbits and eggs and these kinds of things. And sometimes those claims get really amplified. And so what I did was I took a couple of those memes. I found an internet article that sort of ran with that. And then a couple others that were like, no, it's actually not. And then I had AI tools generate two different answers, and I presented them. And so it was really a process of saying, okay, critique and analyze, and sort of along the way, maybe realize just relying on the AI isn't going to get you very far any more than reliance on Wikipedia without fact checking. And certainly I know colleagues that say you can't use Wikipedia. My attitude is usually you can start with Wikipedia, but you'd better have other sources and be able to verify it. Or just a Google search where if you do it really sloppily, I had students, we were about 10 years ago, we were looking at the history of Buffalo's religious leaders, and we'd gone across the street to Forest Lawn Cemetery. They'd seen the tombstones of these people, and I wanted them to write a short biography. And the one, I don't remember the name exactly, but let's say it was James Smith. Not exactly a unique name, but an effective Google search could find the information. But they just searched James Smith, and they waved me over and they said, it says he was an axe murderer in London. Well, let's think about James Smith, church, Buffalo, pastor, something or other, to narrow it down. So again, it's the sophistication in using the tools. These are the things that they're going to want wherever they go to work, that they're going to be asked, you have half an hour to find out this information or vet this information. They need to use the tools. And if we can be helping them develop those skills and maybe do it in a way that's more cheating proof than other systems.
I'm glad you started with the lateral reading, and I just kind of want to address that, how important it is. I think that we teach our students how to scrutinize, and it needs to start at the kindergarten level. And we're living in a dangerous age in terms of information. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out of there, and AI can supercharge that. And make it very convincing. And we need to really up our game across the board in preparing our students for that age. But in terms of what I'm really interested in this year with AI is student-facing AI. So there are a lot of applications out there that will allow you to create a custom bot. You're reading a piece of literature in class, you're learning some type of math concept, and you can program the bot to actually interact with the student. And based on the student's mastery of that content, it can differentiate it. When I think of this at the elementary or middle school or high school level, differentiating the content so that it is focused on it's delivered in a way that addresses something that the student really cares about. Present this concept as if it were a Taylor Swift song, or present this concept as if it was related to Minecraft. And increasing using AI to increase the engagement that we're presenting to our kids, but also using AI to differentiate. If a student's reading an article and then is quizzed on that article by the AI, and the AI recognizes that the student hasn't mastered that content, they could simplify the reading level, or they could hone in on a particular part of the article that the student's not mastering. And this technology is here right now. It's not quite as robust as we might want it to be, but I would imagine in another 6 months, a year, it's going to be. And I think when people hear me talk this way about this, they get concerned about, oh my God, the teacher could be replaced by something like this. And I think what we need to look at is that it frees the teacher up then to work with those students who really need that help. So rather than, again, going back to the whole group instruction and just, focusing all of your attention on the whole group, when really you're only really reaching a fraction of that group, using AI to help you convey content. And then for those students who are really struggling, working with them one-on-one, human to human. I think the United Nations just came out with some guidance for AI, and there was another publication, I can't think of what it was, but they're stressing the importance that when we use AI, we need to maintain those human relationships. And one way we can do that is by making a teacher's job more efficient, taking some of the stuff, even if it's assessment of a student's performance on a reading task, taking that off of their plate so that they can really work with those students, both the high-flying kids, allow them to take the high-flying kids to the next level in a small group, and the struggling kids work with them in small group or one-on-one. I think AI can really be beneficial to our pedagogy in that respect.
Well, and I think of the way my kids, and full disclosure, they were in the Kenton district, had the math practice tools that, whether it was addition or multiplication or whatever, that, the expectation was, and, for some kids, this was probably an access issue, but that they were supposed to spend some time each night practicing it, and that then the teacher would get the report of, oh, you had 90% accuracy, or you did fine on multiplying by 1 through 8, but you had trouble with your 9s. And all those are the kinds of things that also, that it may have just been a shift of how the student was interacting with it. Are you writing them out on paper, like I remember in my own classes, or are you doing it online? But in terms of what the teacher was doing, they're getting the report. They're not having to grade 50 student papers of, and check the accuracy. Instead, they're able to see sort of the patterns of, okay, we've all mastered this. We can move on to the next level. Or these are the people that are struggling with this. What do we do to reinforce it? And yeah, I suppose I could see, concern in some ways that's eliminating the need for teachers, but instead, it is, as you say, I think it's allowing the teachers to do other things. I don't get to teach it very often, but sometimes I've taught Hebrew language, and it's the same kind of way that I would not want to fully hand over the grammar practice, because I'd want to be able to see and do some of it myself, but to have a tool that can also, just like Duolingo and some of the others, that can give the nitty gritty, yes, you spelled this correctly, but you forgot the accent and those kinds of things. That's the stuff that would be dreadfully tedious to have to do as an instructor. And you can work on other things if the tools can help you.
So I think there's a need for teachers to try to differentiate the content and the assessments for each of the students, so that the ones that need more assistance have maybe a less of a challenge than those that are at the top level of the scale. And that's something that AI is good at. Write this write these instructions in the level of this grade, or, write the instructions in a different level. And, being able to deliver those different levels to each of the students. And, in some of the universities, you have hundreds of students in a single class, and being able to find and address that, that will hopefully evolve. But I do think that that's something that AI will help us with. You want to be able to challenge somebody just enough so that you learn best from failure. So be able to, provide something that's a little bit challenging, so that you can then move to the next level of challenge. And that's something that I look forward to seeing.
You've been anticipating adaptive assessment for decades now, the idea of a learning machine. And actually, we've been just if we could get it to serve an easier question if the student gets it wrong, we'll be happy with that. Mm-hmm. And if AI can deliver more, to your point, that adaptive assessment means that we can give students plenty more opportunities to practice skills, even when we're not, we're engaged over here, kind of thing. So that's a really interesting possibility. I'd like to see mechanically from ed tech, if you're out there, ed tech, and you're listening, I would like to see, so a lot of you sort of touched on this idea of trying to get feedback, or trying to get students to experiment with AI and then get a sense of how they're using AI. And I've seen like Mike Kent's is one, and there's a few other bloggers and sort of educational teachers in some places, and education, various people that are sort of involved in education have said, well, have students share the chat log with you as a source to this transparency on how are they interacting with the AI? Because at that point, we can do multiple things. We can say, how are you using AI to put this essay together? Also, how are you demonstrating to me that you have command of the content so that you can prompt the AI and assess what the AI is giving back to you in ways that indicate you have this command of whatever it is we're supposed to be learning so that you can use the AI effectively. That transcript's a little clumsy. I mean, because it can be long, it can be a lot of, I mean, as a teacher, then it's one of these sort of sources that you're scanning, looking for things, but it can add a lot of teacher workload. So I'd say if some educational technology developer can develop some way where the AI provides a summary of the conversation, and then the student goes, yep, okay, so yeah, that, or something like that, that has some sort of integrity to it that we can trust, then we can definitely say, then we can, your homework is to have a conversation, even to have an AI because we often say it's a great teaching tactic to make students teach, right? Teach the AI about, Rembrandt's, the first half of his career as an artist, right? And then the AI has to report back to me, the instructor, how well the student did, and the AI was like, well, I had an awful lot of questions, and I'm pretty sure Rembrandt didn't live in Berlin in the 1930s. Like, then the AI is looking for the hallucinations, right? So I'm sort of intrigued by these possibilities along the lines of all these things that you've been talking about.
Mark, can I jump in on that for a second? So, as I say, I had done these sample AI queries 6 months ago, but I'm going to assume for a moment that they still would give similar results. But even in class today, well, sort of side note, the Google tool, it used to be Bard. What is it now? Gemini. Okay.
Gemini.
So the interesting thing is that the links to Bard results are dead now. And it, it shows up Gemini. No, there's nothing for your search. But, and actually also trying to log in from the classroom using my Canisius account, I got a notice saying that this has been blocked in your system.
Yeah.
Thought that was kind of interesting.
To be transparent, it was never blocked so much as never turned on.
Well, fair.
Yeah.
Fair. But anyways, I
I
just found that interesting.
It puts IT people in a kind of a weird place.
Right.
Yeah.
But using ChatGPT, I had given 2 different prompts and wanted to show them that, the old garbage in, garbage out, but the prompt matters. So the first prompt was, what is religion? And it gave an answer. Then I said, how do you define religion? Or just define religion? And of course, the interesting thing was that the headline that ChatGPT gave was define religion succinctly. I hadn't added that, but ChatGPT put that in as the header. But it was still the same general content, but organized very differently. And so I did also want to point out to them that the question you give will impact the results you get.
Right.
And so again, to what you were saying of being able to ask the right questions, because you could just give the sort of generic, what were the causes of the French Revolution, and it would give the average student response, or you could frame it in a different way of asking about individual parties in the French Revolution and everything like that. But it is as I say, I found it very interesting that the slight phrasing of the question did really impact not only the content but also how they framed it, how they
leads to
formatted it.
Those of us in the liberal arts love to say this, but I think it crosses disciplines too. I mean, a lot of what we teach our students is how to ask good questions, right? Mm-hmm. And so that does give me some cautious optimism that there is a way to incorporate AI into what we do. We just haven't found it yet. And more to the point, AI hasn't found us yet. It's incumbent on the developers of this AI technology to be asking seriously, the notorious problem in ed tech where the teachers or professors are the last to be consulted. They will be successful to the extent to which they pay attention to educators and what we're doing. I would say we could probably, since we're coming up on the end of the hour, it might be worth, since there was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in 2023, to say, in what ways has AI maybe become a little less formidable to us? Either because we've discovered its limitations, or we've just had a chance to reflect on what we're doing. And AI might be useful, it may not be, but in any event, it doesn't necessarily spell doom for education. Robin, thoughts?
So I think when we met last year, we were pretty much concentrating on the big large language learning models. There were not, there was just, maybe a handful or a dozen or two.
Three, maybe.
Yeah, that we were even discussing. And now if you look at the world of AI and what tools are out there are hundreds coming out every single day, 100 of different tool choices. And although it's, that's a little bit more formidable, that you have all these choices now. But I do want to say that we need to provide more of that education about how to be a lifelong learner and how to validate even the tools that we're picking up and using, and teaching our learners and teaching us, how do we ensure that whatever tool we're creating a password for is secure, and is it accessible? And, I think, there is a policy that, at UB, unless software goes through a very large, intense process, you're not supposed to be touching it.
Mhm.
Well, none of these tools that we've been talking about have gone through a lot of the process, maybe one or two of them. But I think we need to, just understand what is a voluntary product accessibility template, and what does that tell us about the tool? What are the, security and privacy guides that we need to follow before we select some of the tools? There's, quite a bit to choose from nowadays, and it'll help you figure out what is your objective first. What are you trying to do? And then you can go out and try to find the artificial intelligence tool that will help you accomplish that goal. So that's one way that I think we're a little bit better off, being able to be more targeted in our approach.
Well, I agree with a lot of that. And I think for me, it's also part of, well, mixed good and bad, or risky perhaps, but the fact that it's out there and it's more accessible and, in a sense, user friendly. The analogy I was thinking of with this, and I'm going to show my age, was, writing my high school papers on my dad's Texas Instruments 99.4A with the cassette drive. And you had to make sure you put in the bracketed commands to underline or italicize. Well, actually, italics depended on if you had the right printer ball or whatever. But if you forgot to end the underlining, the whole rest of the document would be underlined, because it wasn't the what you see is what you get kind of formatting that I got as soon as I got to college and got my own new computer, with Microsoft Word and everything like that. And so, and then when it even reached the point that you could just click across the top and say, underline this, you didn't have to remember that Control U or whatever was underlined. I think to a certain extent, some of the tools are getting to that point where you can get to it just in the Google search bar, rather than having to remember, okay, I go to ChatGPT, what's the account I used?
I have to go to a place on the internet.
I have to go to a
Where this
place,
thing
I
lives.
have to log in, I have to remember what my password was. Now, of course, if you're going to some of the tools where you specifically have an account that can remember your history and can give you your whole search history on the side of the screen, that's different. But as I say, to a certain extent, it is making the barrier and the technical skill to access these things easier. Whereas I also know we'd had some initial conversations here of I was doing the searches rather than telling my students to do the searches because I didn't necessarily want to require them if some of them were hesitant. I don't want there to be any evidence that I have ever used AI tools because I think that's a matter of integrity. Well, if a student came to me and said that, am I going to say, no, you must use the AI tools or you fail? Whereas now there is a certain accessibility without having it becoming, I haven't tested it, but I'm assuming you might be able to use the search bar tool in an incognito window so that it would never remember that you were the one who had done it or something like that.
Yeah, at this point, most of the AIs allow you, if you're not authenticated, you can still, it just doesn't, it isn't a search that you can, it isn't a record you can recover.
Right.
Whether it enters into training data or not, I'm not sure.
And even that concept is something that we need to have faculty and learners and everybody understand. When you're typing into an AI tool or software, do you understand if whatever you're typing in is getting shared and being used for training, or is what you're putting in there protected? And in most cases, it's not. So you need to be cognizant of what you're typing in and what you're sharing.
Well, and connected to that, I was part of a conversation this summer for an organization that develops some pedagogical materials, and they were talking about maybe creating an in-house tool to create some of these things. And so we could share our copyrighted content with the in-house tool to generate things, but not have that copyrighted content become part of the material that everybody could access. And so, I think that gives some new possibilities that we weren't even ready to think about last year.
That kind of brings me to what I'm heartened by is ed tech's response to AI. I think I'm not going to say all companies are being super responsible, but at the end of the day, it's a marketplace, and if they want their product to be successful, then they need to build in the safeguards that educators are going to want. So there are a lot of tools out there that are not including student input into the language model. They're protecting that. They're signing agreements with districts guaranteeing that student data is protected. And they're also creating these tools that really aren't used to give students answers, but to elicit answers from students. Having conversations with students about the content, getting students to demonstrate their knowledge, and then wrapping all that up in a report back to the teacher so the teacher can see very clearly what the student understands and what they don't. So I'm hopeful that ed tech is embracing AI in a very responsible way, and I think it's going to be beneficial for education.
Okay, well, we're a minute past, and I wanted to thank you for joining us tonight and giving us your thoughts on where you are in September of 2024. Maybe we'll make this a program and come back in 2025 and see how things have gone since then. For those of you joining remotely, thank you very much. And stay tuned because our conversations on AI Symposium series will continue throughout this year.